Hello and welcome to episode 251 of the Crate and Crowbar. It is the 22nd of August, 2018. My name is Chris Thurston and tonight I'm joined by Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Philippa War.
Hi.
Hello everybody. A nice relaxing day, far, far away from Gamescom for all of us.
Yeah, it looked like a horrific crash.
It always is. It always is. It's the sweatiest place on earth for the magical week that it spans. But it's over now and it has furnished us with a lot of trailers for things. I think it's over. I know, you know it's over because the journalists return home.
I
like
thought
pigeons.
It had tomorrow, because Tom's not here.
Everyone's got, maybe it is still going. It would make sense if it was still going.
By the time people hear this, it'll be over.
Yeah, by the time you listen to this, it'll definitely be over.
Okay, I just suddenly...
But you're right, Pip. It might still be going.
I just got the wrong end of the stick with where everyone was
Yeah.
right now.
Well, maybe I have. Maybe both ends of the stick are wrong and it's the centre of the stick that's desirable.
Maybe everyone went to a party in Cologne and just didn't invite us.
That's also very possible. I've
made some game trailers to cover it up.
I've seen a lot of tweets of like very sleepy people tweeting like, oh, thank God that's over. But they may have just been referring to Tuesday.
Well, because it splits into two parts, doesn't it? There's DevCom and then there's Gamescom.
Yeah. Yeah. DevCom 1. DevCom 2.
Because I thought it was only open to the public from today.
You're probably right because today is Wednesday. Yeah. So by the time people listen to this, it'll actually be in full swing. I guess the newsy part of Gamescom is over. That'll be it. That'll be what people are referring to.
I don't think anyone will really care, and this will have just been a load of wasted clarification.
Well, look, we've got to find the content wherever it will emerge. And this happens to be where it was. So in terms of Gamescom things, I think we can safely skip over new trailers for Battlefield and Assassin's Creed and things like that, because there's just a lot of them. And you look at them and you go, yeah. And I did. But I did think it was interesting that Supermassive Games, who made Until Dawn for the PlayStation, are doing a anthologized horror game series. I saw this because I think Sam Barlow tweeted about it. And I think it's a neat idea. It is called, he said, turning around, because in the space between looking at this moments before starting recording and this very moment, I've forgotten what it's called. It is called The Dark Pictures, which is a horror anthology series, which begins with a game called The Man of Medan.
Is an anthology series like an episodic thing? Or?
So it sounds like a series of horror games in the format that Until Dawn used, but probably shorter, but each one a new thing rather than when we think of like an episodic game, you traditionally mean a continuation of one story rather than
I wonder if it means possibly in the style of Edith Finch. To me that felt like an anthology.
Yeah, I think that is an anthology within a game, whereas this is going to be lots of separate releases, if that makes sense.
All right.
But yeah, if that makes sense, I'd agree with you. Edith Finch is totally an anthology of stories.
Which one was Until Dawn?
Until Dawn was the one where it was the very divisive kind of cabin in the woods, not as in like the film, as in there literally is a cabin in the woods, like sort of teen horror movie where you control different teenagers, and it's sort of a little bit survival horror, but not a lot, more choose your own adventure style.
Was it the one you didn't like?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the thing. So I really like this idea because I like the idea of using anthology formats, like taking advantage of an engine or a technology and telling lots of different stories with it. I think is a good thing. And to clarify, the things I didn't like about Until Dawn was the way the technology was used necessarily, and not the structure itself. Like the notion of a sort of, I mean, it's essentially a little bit like Life is Strange, which we'll get to, that kind of branching kind of story format. But sort of skipping from character to character to tell different sides of a story. I didn't like it in Until Dawn because I felt like it was quite sort of prescriptive in some ways and sort of encouraged you to game the system or lose ownership over the decisions. And maybe I thought it was, and actually a criticism I think it genuinely doesn't stand up to is that I thought it was over long for what it was doing. So this, so I'm willing to, as someone who likes horror stuff, like give it another go for this kind of thing. The first one is about a spooky ghost ship full of zombies and some American teenagers have managed to get onto that somehow. They get everywhere. So
There was also, on the subject of horror, there was that Bioshocky one, the Sunken City? The Sinking City? The Drowning City? Anyone know which
Wet
one it
City.
is? The city that repeatedly gets wet. It's a kind of just a CGI trailer of like a guy in a old-timey streets who then finds the sea kind of falling down from the sky, basically, and
That's rain, Tom.
turning everything. That's extremely heavy rain. Imagine the heaviest possible rain. David Cage has got nothing on this. And then he gets attacked by some tentacles, and then he wakes up and it all loops over again in a very Prey-like way. So it's literally nothing we haven't seen before. Every single element of it is from something else, but it is very stylish.
Speaking of everything we've seen before is in something else, the one thing I thought there's maybe a slight cock-up in the trailer for Man of Medan is right at the very, very end. Like, I don't know when this ship went missing, but I'm assuming like the 20s or something. And like a spooky lady approaches this man's shoulder, and she's dressed as sort of, very elegantly. And then she turns into a scary zombie, then cut to black. And then the very faint kind of 20s bit of swing music in the background, but in a kind of spooky underwater way. And I feel like you can do plenty of things with the sea, and there can be different music in the sea. The spooky music that plays under the sea doesn't necessarily have to be like an old kind of dancehall classic heard as if underwater in a scary way. That has been really specifically done. Mm-hmm. But I feel that way about the use of the same thing in Fallout now. I feel like if you're in the apocalypse, you're also not allowed to use 50s records anymore. Like, find a new thing for people to be into. Podcasts. I don't know. So
90s garage classics.
Yeah, exactly. Why not?
That'd be great.
It's like Craig David blasting out in like outer space.
I guess
Craig David comes up an unusual amount on this podcast.
It feels like the 80s has become a kind of trendy theme in recent releases, like that Boss Key game that wasn't very successful.
Lawbreakers.
the other one.
The Free Radical.
The one they tried to...
Radical Heights.
Radical Heights.
I should have been more specific, sorry. And then the one that looks exactly like Simon Stalenhag's art but isn't, from Avalanche.
Oh, yeah.
Zero something, Generation Zero.
Yeah.
Is also 80s.
I'd argue that Cyberpunk is profoundly 80s, as in that specific interpretation of what Cyberpunk means.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. And then before that, the use of 80s music in Metal Gear 5. As in, when you're going to pick your innocuous pop music to go with your murder setting, then you got a wide range to use.
Incongruous, probably. I'm just thinking I wouldn't call the choices innocuous. But that was just because I find it interesting.
I remember being horribly offended when I loved the Fallout 3 soundtrack and listened to it outside of the game. And I did so by extracting all the MP3 files. And I was listening to it and thinking, man, I really love this one track. This is my favorite track. And the file name was generic_jazzy.mp3. Aw, I like the generic one.
Did it turn out to be something else that they just named as...
I think it is, yeah, because there's some stuff that I'm pretty sure like has, vocals and stuff that I think is a real song. And I think I don't know which, what role this person would have held on the team, but there's someone who's like intentionally named these things stuff that the designers could understand as to when they should play it and something like that.
Right, I see. Yeah. So this is when the situation is generic and calls for jazz.
You can play this kind of jazzy thing anytime.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, what else was the news we were going to talk about? Oh yeah, we could talk about, a few things actually. We could talk about the Life is Strange 2 trailer. Pip, what did you make of Life is Strange 2? It's still strange.
It's one of those ones where, like, I'm sort of reserving judgment, and I will probably do so unless I have to write about it until at least halfway through the series, because I remember the trajectory of the original one. So, and having played Captain Spirit, it really highlighted to me that if you don't happen to be on the exact emotional frequency that the game demands of you, or not the exact, but it's if you don't quite entirely mesh with it. It will rub you up the wrong way a lot. And so, because the first one really suited me and Captain Spirit didn't quite, so I had very
we talked about
different experiences with each of them. So I really want to see what they've done, and I want to see sort of a different dynamic play out with two people, and it looks like it'll explore some very different issues. It's one of those ones where I don't know how they will do on that front.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen the trailer, the new one is about two brothers, one of whom's like teenage, the other one's pretty young, who are escaping something and trying to hitchhike from Seattle to Mexico, which is a neat setup. And I think the younger brother or the older brother or both of them have some kind of power, but the trailer doesn't make it obvious what the power necessarily is.
Is it explained why they're not considering Canada as a refuge? It seems closer from
I think
Seattle.
whatever they've done is probably also, like, I don't know, like...
Maybe the bad thing is Canada.
Yeah, maybe...
They're fleeing the Canadian border, which is slowly descending.
Yeah, indeed.
Like a tidal wave, but, of maple syrup.
It does say life is strange. This would be a strange thing to happen. I haven't played the first game, so I don't really know what their kind of parameters are.
Well, I mean, famously, the first one ends... Well, the first one is about this approaching storm and this kind of apocalyptic event which will converge at some point. Maybe the approaching storm in Game 2 is represented by the nation of Canada, gradually descending and thus forcing these boys to flee south with their newspaper mind powers. I don't know what was going on there.
I also was responding to emails while it was playing in the background, so okay. I think I only saw, I just wanted to make sure that I'd sort of glimpsed it, and I wasn't not watching because I was distracted. It's because I kind of have an awkward relationship with spoilers or with knowing much of anything about that kind of game. I want to go in as fresh as possible while still being able to do my job and commission things,
Right,
so it's that kind of like watching through half paying attention.
I was going to ask if anything stood out to you as an obvious link with Captain Spirit, because I couldn't say anything.
Yeah. I mean, if you...
I haven't played Captain Spirit, so, but like, obviously...
The two boys who are in it crop up in passing.
Right.
But, I mean, yeah.
Okay. That's fine then.
Or at least unless I'm making stuff up and remembering so hideously wrong that all of my opinions are null and void. But yeah, I do believe they live next door.
Right. That makes complete sense
your
then.
Boy. Your boy, Chris.
What up, YouTube? Yes, I couldn't make out what because obviously Life Strange 1 is all about time travel and being able to rewind to do conversations differently, which is a perfect fit for the kind of branching dialogue choice adventure game that it is. And this one, so there's a moment where your other Chris, he looks at a newspaper and the newspaper says something like, police tragedy, and then he's in that story. And I don't know whether it was like a cinematic device to say that he's remembering causing this police tragedy, or if his power is to like dive into newspapers and make them about him. Which sounds like a terrible superpower.
I can make anything about me.
How much like Harry Potter's photos was it?
Well, not a lot, because he was sort of inside it, like as in it became the scenario that he was he was experiencing, rather than it simply just being a photo with a wizard in it.
Certainly sounds like a video game device.
It really does. Like being able to pick up a piece of evidence and go like, tell me your secret piece of evidence.
Flashback.
Was in, I think, Murdered Soul Suspect, where you're a ghost.
Ugh.
That was bad, that game. That wasn't good at all.
I'd be really, really into reading really fun books if that was my superpower.
Yeah, you'd just live in the 100-acre wood if that was your superpower.
Well, I don't know whether I don't know. I don't know if there'd be a house for me. I'd have to live with one of the existing animals, and I think that might be a problem. I think
particularly
their awkward lodger.
Well, I don't think I think that living in the 100-acre wood would probably be the quickest way to stop liking the 100-acre wood. Because you'd either live with, you'd have to live with like, rabbit?
Well, maybe.
Or owl? Or.
Maybe that's why they're attempting to escape to Mexico. because of the thick woodland of both the Pacific Northwest and Canada is too strongly redolent of the time they spent lost in the 100-acre wood. Yeah, exactly. I feel like we've written a very different game to the one that they've almost certainly made.
We won't know until the end of September, is it, when it's out?
Yeah. Episode 1 is out, at least.
About the 20th, 27th. One of them.
Anyone remember Cryostasis?
Yes. Which one was that?
It was the cool... you're on a frozen ship, and your power is when you find a corpse, you can embody them and relive their final moments. But the interesting twist on it was that you were in control of their final moments, and if you played out differently to how it originally played out, you'd change the future as well. So, like, you would, you could avoid their death completely and then the body isn't there, or you could change something before they die that you don't have the opportunity to change in the present, and then it would change your situation.
Wasn't there an X-Files episode that, it wasn't exactly that, but it was that you could look at a photo of someone's retina and see the last thing they saw?
That is a plot point in the X-Files and Wild Wild West.
What, the Wiki Wild Wild West?
Yes. It's on the Wild Wild West wiki.
In Fringe, all windows record all audio that's happened in the room, like, and you can play it like a record, because it's in, like, it's all vibrations, and glass is technically a liquid, and therefore there's little grooves, and you can just play.
That'd be the worst audio diary thing for a immersive sim ever.
Just use the window.
Yeah.
See, I think I've watched pretty much all of Fringe, and I don't remember anything that happened, except that guy who's in that other thing was in it. And I don't mean Anna Torv or Pacey from Dawson's Creek.
John Noble?
Yes.
The old guy?
Yeah, but what else has he been in? I can't
Lord of the Rings. He's in Sherlock.
In the X-Files.
Not Sherlock. What's the
Elementary?
Other one? Yeah,
the good one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's it. That's what I was thinking of as well. Good.
What were we talking about? Wiki Wild Wild West, Gamescom, being able to see things through a dead person's eyes.
I got some more on that subject. Yeah. Return of the Obra Dinn is another game where you are on a ship full of corpses, and
God, we're just really like going around this theme.
So
Ships full of bodies.
every time someone mentions that game, I get the Beatles stuck in my head because of Obra Dinn, Obra Dinn.
Life doesn't go on if there are any of the corpses in this boat.
In that game, I believe you can't change the past, but you can relive someone's final moments, and your job is just to find out how everyone died, and you have a ledger in which you write it down once you figured it out.
Right.
And I'm very excited about that. It's in
Can you write
1-bit color. I don't think so. I can't remember. I've played it. I played a demo of it where that mechanic is in, and I feel like it might even be multiple choice. I can't remember.
Right.
Well, if they know, why don't they answer?
With the game, it's not like a person interviewing you. It's
No, but I get so annoyed with multiple choice questions because you're just like, okay, well, this is a test. This isn't
They usually are in tests. Yes.
No, but you know what I mean. It's not like a kind of like personal satisfaction thing. It's like, oh wow, I don't know where I'm going with this. But I'm just
Distant Dog agreed with you.
I'm better at spotting a fake out answer than I am at actually remembering the subject matter, so I often do well at multiple choice.
I think when you started talking, because I never got round to playing the demo that went up, when you started talking, I started thinking of it more as like a Sam Barlow, Her Story type arrangement where you figure things out, but for your own amusement. And then you said multiple choice, and I instantly went, well, that wasn't what I agreed to when I started imagining things.
I can't remember quite how it works. I feel like when you have it right, it sort of ticks it off, and like it's a magic book. But this is from Lucas Pope, who did Papers, Please, and it's in 1-bit color, which is kind of amazing. So it's all like
the famously unpolitical Papers, Please.
Yes.
It's the same green color as Mr. Skeleton's plant pot.
It is, yeah. That is a really dense reference.
Oh, that's not going to help anyone,
No.
is it?
For the podcast that we're recording, Pip is referring to My Succulent. The reason her name is Mr. Skeleton is because of a mishearing of a character in the very good film Jupiter Ascending. That is all you need to know about the story of why My Succulent is called that. That's all the podcast we've got time for. What else?
And on that bombshell.
Well, on talking about it, we talked about corpses in boats and episodic stuff. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Hitman briefly.
Oh yeah.
Because there was some news about this, which is sort of interesting, which is that Hitman 2, but not the first Hitman 2, Hitman 2 is going to include all of the Hitman episodes.
From season 1.
From season 1, not Hitman 1.
Of Hitman, which is not Hitman 1.
Yeah. But that means that Sappy
the next Hitman will include all the stuff from the last Hitman.
That's a much faster way of saying what I just said, Tom. Thank you very much.
And with, like, it's got to have some kind of improvements like AI and, I don't know, new sneaking methods and stuff, and that'll all be kind of backfitted into the season 1 stuff.
Yes. And this is interesting because
leaving that to me, huh?
You're the Hitman man.
Well, I can't help thinking, I can't help trying to see the angle behind it. Like, it's cool. I'm excited. I'm glad they're doing it. But it's like IO, sort of parted ways with Square Enix. Last Hitman game was published under Square Enix, and it was kind of dropped by Square Enix, and then they sort of struck some kind of deal where they're able to go independent and still own all of Hitman. And I just wondered if there's something about, like, the deal they have for the previous Hitman, like they're still bound by their old contract where Square Enix get X% or whatever. And so it's extra good for them if they can just kill that game. Like, no one ever buys Hitman 1, last Hitman, ever again, and they only ever buy Hitman 2, where I assume IO get all the money. That was my sort of slightly paranoid theory on it, which is not a bad thing, even if that's true. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I like that. So the main thrust of this is, in addition to being able to play those levels, all of the features from the new one are backloaded into the previous one. The standout one for me being that AI characters now understand mirrors, which is actually genius. Like, I'm surprised that a stealth game hasn't considered that before. Like, as an environmental hazard that is everywhere, that meaningfully changes the stealth layout of a room, mirrors that bounce vision cones backwards is actually something that I'm surprised not to have seen.
Yeah.
Does it work with all shiny surfaces, like spoons and
I think it's just mirrors, but that's the thing. You should extend it to, like, shiny car doors.
You saw me in a spoon.
Yeah. Like, there's this guy, like, well, you know, at this point in his patrol, he holds up a spoon and goes, ooh, look at how shiny that spoon is. Oh, a murderer's in it.
A murderer with a really thin and then really wide face.
I hope this is fun in practice, because it's a good movie scene where, like, the hero is looking at themselves in the mirror and they glimpse the villain coming up behind them, and it's a great shot if you get the right angle right. But when you're in the third person camera, usually looking kind of down and at the floor, it might be just really confusing. Like, well, how the hell did he see me?
They'd have to have some bizarre kind of, like, explanation that actually all people in Hitman see in that way. They all see in the third person down at the floor, so all the mirrors are kind of like floor level. But maybe the Paris level's full of, like, bathrooms with, like, floor to ceiling mirrors in them. So, which are previously the best murder spots because no one could understand what a mirror was, but now arguably the worst. So that's that. The other news that I thought was fun, was that Dota International has started this week. I'm not going to bang on about Dota too much, but, as a surprise, today, at the time of recording this, they, released a Gabe Newell Mega Kills announcer pack. Which they put together presumably very quickly, where if you load it, it comes free with the compendium, or the battle pass, which is £7 or something. And it means that whenever multi-kills and things happen in the game, Gabe Newell talks about that. And I was going to say, you know, I think Tom, when we were talking about this earlier briefly, you said that, you know, it's sort of a sort of break of decorum, I think.
Yeah, it's very rare for them to, you know, they're well aware of Gabe sort of being a human meme in the wider internet, but they almost never play into it. Like, he's very reserved. He's very serious. He's known for sort of randomly replying to emails. Like, he will just sort of email some complete stranger, just because they asked a question at just the right time and you happen to see it. But other than that, he's usually a bit of a closed book. And this is a rare, example of them just sort of fully owning it and just saying, yes, Gabe is funny.
So the thing is, he delivers everything completely straight and with almost no enthusiasm, but that very measured, like, obviously there's jokes that have been written for him and he delivers them and they're funny because he's not trying to deliver them. He's just saying them.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, if you get a rampage, which is killing the entire enemy team, he says, email me at gaben@valvesoftware.com to tell me about your rampage. And, like, Dota Reddit at the moment is full of people tweeting his replies to their emails. And it's clear that he's just using whatever the kind of Google auto email reply thing is. Like, excellent, great job, fantastic.
Sure, works for me.
There's a few good gags in it. There's,
I can't do Tuesday. How about Wednesday?
Has Google ever said that? Really specific replies. Actually, I can't because I'm down with dysentery.
When the email about who's available for the podcast comes around, sometimes I get options to say, actually, I can't do that day.
Huh.
It's quite generic, but it's, that'll be one of the options. It's, yes, great. Sorry, I can't do that because blah, blah, blah.
I must be very positive because I feel like it always gives me 3 ways to say yes to things. It's just like, sure, yeah, can do, or no problem.
Does it also then give you a, sorry, I didn't make your thing? It depends whether you're actually a positive person that goes to things, whether you're a positive person in the moment, but you can't make good on them, whether you're like me, who apparently is like, oh, I'm always looking for a loophole, or whether it's like, I won't turn up and then I suddenly change my mind.
It would be great to see like a Google suggestion that's like, sorry, I didn't go to that. I only committed to it because Google made it so easy to say yes.
The worst one is when you get like, I got an email, it was a couple of weeks ago now, but like something genuinely sad that happened to somebody, something like, I can't, and then one of the Google responses was, oh no! And it's like, they should, if it's smart enough to detect that this is like, one of them's like, oh no, or I'm sorry to hear that. And it's like, if it's smart enough to detect that the email contains something that would be either apologized for or commiserated, it shouldn't offer you autocomplete options.
Yeah.
Like, it should just be for like positive things only, and positive and neutral only, but that's a different issue.
You mean it shouldn't just pop up with the cry face emoji?
Yeah, exactly. Like, sad trombone.wav.
I wonder if there is someone who's in a position where they regularly get people, I suppose like a funeral director or something, like where just almost every email is that.
But if you emailed the funeral director and they just replied back, oh no!
Maybe they reply with generic jazz.
generic underscore jazz. Generic underscore remorseful.
There's a few good gags in the Gabe Newell pack. He will never say the word 3 or the number 3. So if you get a triple kill, because it says like, double kill, and then it's more than 2 but less than 4 kills, and like an uncountable number of kills and stuff. And that's, you had to be there. It's funny in the context of Dota 2. And there's a lot of, like,
when you get a bounty rune, does he say, thanks for buying a compendium, sucker?
There is a line that says, it's something like, if both teams completely die, like, a team fight ends with everybody dead. He says something like, everyone's dead. I think that might be the term I'm getting this completely wrong. This was probably only possible due to Dota Plus. Thank you for spending money on Dota Plus, everybody. It was completely worth it. Like, it's surprisingly on point. There's one which is, the entire enemy team was an ass and we won't be working with them again.
Oh my god.
Which is a reference to the previous time Gabe let his hair down. So yeah, it's just, I thought it was quite sweet. And I always quite like Gabe's intros to into the international. Like this year, they had a brilliant band. They had I don't know what it's called, the aerialists. That's the right thing. So dancers who they grab onto 2 ribbons and then fly into the sky by magic and upper body strength. They had that and all this great stuff, and they have all the teams walk out and the music and the lights and everything else. And then Gabe comes out invariably in like jeans, a polo shirt and sandals and says, hey, and people go mental. And it's always, the lack of decorum is almost startling, but quite charming in its own special way. And obviously, he's a billionaire, so it doesn't really matter what I think. I think that's it for news. Tom, unless you want to say something?
I'd like to read a funny tweet I read.
Excellent.
Because it struck me that it could be a kind of quiz. So this is from Marmalade Tim, who is the creator of Sluggy's Fruit Emporium.
Very charming game.
Turn the internet back on.
Is that why the marmalade?
I feel like it was called that before that game. I don't know for sure though.
Interesting.
Twitter has lost the tweet, but now I'm going to find it again.
More as we have it.
So he has done a handy table of cross-referencing common prefixes for game names and common suffixes for game names. And I would like to read those for you now, and you have to tell me whether they exist or not.
Okay.
So across the top there's the prefixes: over, fire, titan, dark, and battle. And then down the side is the suffixes: watch, lands, fall, souls, front, and field.
Okay.
So over, watch. Does that exist?
Yeah.
Yes.
Fire, watch.
Yes.
Yes.
Titan Watch?
No.
Yes.
Really? So
I'm just being different.
I'm just going to take Tim's word for it on the yeses.
Yeah, absolutely.
He says no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dark Watch?
Yes.
Ooh. Ooh. No.
It's a yes from Tim.
Pip's kicking my ass.
Battle Watch?
Yes.
No.
It's a no from Tim.
Damn it.
I would have guessed
Eat
yes
it,
on that.
war.
Okay, now onto the lands. Overland?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it's land brackets S, so
Yeah.
the S counts. Yep. Fireland?
Yes.
No from Tim. Titanland?
No.
No.
No. Darkland?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
I wonder if there's a Dark Lands or a Dark Land. Doesn't say. Battleland? Or lands?
Yes.
It's certainly yes.
Yeah. Overfall?
No.
Yes.
It's a yes here. It sounds funny to me.
It's just because it sounds like fall over.
Yeah, exactly. The overfall move. Firefall?
Yes.
Yeah.
We all know. Titanfall?
Yes.
Yes.
Darkfall?
Yes.
Yes.
Battlefall?
No.
Yes.
Sorry, you're right on Darkfall. That is a yes. Battlefall, also yes.
Yay!
Falls is a complete line. Every single one there's a fall for it.
All done on falls.
Over Souls?
No.
No.
It's a yes. I have trouble imagining that one. It might be over Soul.
Yeah.
Over Soul is it? Okay. Fire Soul?
Yes.
Surely, yes.
No, according to his graph. Titan Soul?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Dark Soul?
Yes.
No.
Battle Souls?
No.
Hang on.
You're taking this so seriously.
I just don't want
Is anyone keeping score? Because I'm not.
I think Pip's winning.
I feel like I'm winning.
I think you're winning.
What was it? Battle Souls?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a yes, yeah.
Definitely winning.
Overfront?
No.
I feel like we got lucky with Overfall being an actual game. I'm going to say no for this one.
It's a no. Firefront?
Yes.
No.
I would have said yes, but it's a red here.
Yay!
Firefront.
There's got to be a game called Firefront. You're telling me there's an Over Souls, but it's not a Firefront? This is a travesty.
Take it up with the games community.
Titanfront?
No.
No. Darkfront?
Yes.
No.
No.
I
Yeah.
was just...
Yes.
Yes.
Overfield?
Yes.
No.
That's a no here. Firefields?
No.
Yes, yeah.
Ooh.
Titanfields?
Yes.
No.
It's a no. Darkfield?
Yes.
It's what you overfall in.
Overfall in the Darkfield.
Yes.
It's a yes. Battlefield?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. That's it.
Awesome. Can we look through the ones that don't exist?
The ones that don't exist are Titan Watch, Battle Watch, Firelands, Titanlands, Fire Souls, Overfront, Firefront, Titanfront, Darkfront. Front is just not very
So
popular.
front is underused.
Front is underused and Fall is just comprehensive. There's an
Right.
everything Fall. Overfield and Titanfield.
Of those, which of those games would you make?
I like Overfield. it's too much field.
I'm just Overfield. I'm all about Dale.
Darkfront gonna make me laugh.
I quite like, was it Titanfield?
Yep, that's open if you want to use it.
Was Titan Watch free as well?
Yes.
Because that's both of the things Overwatch was going to be called in one name.
Oh, really?
Well, Overwatch is Titan, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, the Titan MMO became Overwatch.
Yeah, I wonder if there should be just like a no suffix one here. So it's just like, if there's a game called Titan or Fire.
Yeah.
There probably is a game called Dark, right?
Probably. It's probably spelled with C or something. It's probably a point-and-click adventure game.
Oh, is that sorted?
Good. That was an excellent bit. We should do quizzes more often. But now we should talk a little bit about what we've been up to this week. Who would like to talk about a game, what they've done play on the computer?
I have played quite a lot, but I have either not got far enough through, or they have been actively bad, or they are under embargo for the most part. But a game which is at least not two of those things is Spore, which I have been playing.
Sure, it's not under embargo.
How long ago was Spore?
10 years.
Gosh.
Exactly.
Gosh.
It actually somehow seems longer.
Yeah, I thought it was
Longer
longer
ago.
Isn't
It feels
it?
like real ancient history.
2008, my friend.
Yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah.
Maybe it feels slightly longer to you because you reviewed it, so presumably you had code a bit earlier and maybe saw some
I did, and I
previews.
also played it at a preview. We talked about this a bit before, but my review, this is the reason you were playing it, right, was because my review came up in the old PC Gamer stuff.
Yeah, I wasn't going to drop you in it, just that there was a mention of the game in an old issue that I was looking through, and I was like, I wonder what that's like now.
Yeah. My review was 90 or 91.
I think it was 91.
Yeah. And I loved it. But it was partly because I played it at a preview that I had a much more positive reaction when it came out than most other people, because I got over all my disappointment at the preview stage. Like, it had been hyped in this kind of crazy way, and then I played it at a preview and realized, oh god, this is not what we're expecting at all. And I wrote a pretty negative preview of like, oh shit, don't expect this crazy sciencey thing. It's much more of a series of mini games, and so then by the time it came out, I was kind of ready to take it on its own terms and was just interested in like the stuff people had made with it, and they'd made incredible things. And I had an awesome time just exploring all those things. But then, of course, a lot of people were not over their disappointment with it when it came out. And it's kind of interesting to like compare to No Man's Sky, because they both had an element of like the impossible in the promise, right? They were both sort of, showed enough to capture people's imaginations and let them run away with it and imagine this sort of...
They're both about freaky looking aliens.
Yep.
Did you know, I've just realised that I actually have a printout of your review in my bag in the other room, if you would like to refer to notes during this discussion.
No, I think I'm okay.
One of my favourite things was, because I also wanted to just sort of remind myself of the context, I guess, and like some of the specifics, I went back and watched the TV trailer for the game, and it uses the word creationism.
Oh my god.
Which is webinar before its time. It's drivatar before its time.
It's Levolution before Levolution.
Levolution was never good enough to fit in that
I love
bracket
that this
of
is like the second
games.
time EA have tried to change the word evolution and fucked it up. Although Levolution is worse, I think, than, Creatolution. What was it? Creativolution?
Creatiolution.
Creatiolution. Because they can't even do like the Creatolution, right? It's
It's creationism and evolution
yeah.
at the same time.
It's just two mutually incompatible things.
That they have decided to try and put together, appeasing incredibly no one.
Were they positing Will Wright's Spore as a kind of bold new answer to what might
Creation
happen?
myth.
Well, I don't know, because I think at that point they were just like, it's cool, it's fine. They end with, I think it's, what universe will you create or build or do or something? And it's just like, I mean,
universe you gonna
do? If you let me off the reins long enough to actually do anything, maybe you'll find out.
What's your experience like of playing it now in the year 2018?
Well, so it tries to do everything, and in doing everything, it does nothing well, really, apart from the first stage, which is the cell stage. And the creature creator is still really easy to use, and I would say intuitive and quite... It's easy to get a creature that works, and I think that is a feat that cannot be underestimated. It's, it looks dated because of the style that they went with. But if you add legs, the thing has legs. It has articulated joints. You can play around with that. You can put wings on it, and it's, it works, and you can create. I made an octopus in it, and it doesn't walk in any way well, and I couldn't find a foot that works with the tentacle conceit, so it had to have no feet. It's got legs and no feet. But it still ended up looking, really faithful. I think it's more that you struggle when you get to other kinds of animals, because the body seems to be a preset random thing. You hit new creation and it generates a shape, that's maybe a bit bulbous in particular bits, or, and you can just sort of keep hitting that to try and get the base shape that you want. But there were a few things that I thought I'd try and create that really wouldn't work because it wouldn't create the right shape to start with. But octopus seemed to work. Fancy parrot going to a party, also good. All of the good things.
Those are the two good things.
Well, yes. And the cell stage is the one that you start with, and that is essentially a 2-dimensional game, somewhere between Pac-Man and just some other things.
A little bit like Flow.
Yeah, that's a good other thing to marry it with. So you start off essentially at the bottom of the food chain in this tidal pool, and this single-celled organism, all that you've really chosen to that point is, I think it's a basic shape maybe. You've named it, and you have selected whether it's a vegetarian, a omnivore, or a carnivore, and that just means that you're either chasing after fleshy lumps or green bits or both. And so essentially you're just trying to eat things that agree with your diet and that are smaller than you, and using that to earn DNA points, I think, and get bigger. And you also can move over little medallion-looking things to pick up new parts that you can then incorporate into your thing's design by paying the DNA cost. So you can add, extra spikes if you need protection, or if you want to go into predation, or you can, get extra flagellae for speed boosts, or I got like electric nodes at one point to, stun those who would disobey me. And you just you increase in size, and the things that were bullying you can start bullying them. And it's very well presented. And
yeah, I remember it looking really nice. Yeah. Does it still look nice?
It does, actually, because you can sort of see the monstrous, evil, bigger, really big bullies on the plane just behind the one you're playing on. Yeah. So, they can't hurt you yet, but they're a sign of things to come, I guess, and they look kind of terrifying.
It's interesting because the cell stage is sort of also the most physically one, and it's very simulated in terms of like where you put the spike on your body determines whether or not the spike hits the enemy before they get to your soft fleshy bits. And so there's strategy in how you lay out the bits.
Yeah, and if you're being chased, obviously you put them on your bum, and if you are likely to be chasing after things, you'd put them on the front, things like that, which is.
And then so I remember liking that, and also getting really invested in like making my creature and how they looked and stuff. But then at the creature stage, I really resented that certain bits had like really good attack values or something, or this mouth that's like totally ugly and doesn't fit with my creature is the 5 damage mouth, and therefore I've just got to have it if I want to survive. Yeah. And
that's the thing that really bothered me, because the creature creator is really good, but to actually get through, for example, it's the creature stage after the cell stage, and to get through that, you're essentially just you're gaming the numbers, because you absolutely need the thing that has 3 or 4 level, charm or posing or dancing or whatever. So, even if you didn't want hooves, you're gonna have hooves.
Which things do add charm? I don't remember.
I can't remember, because hang on. So there's the aggressive skills, and there's the charming sort of social skills. And so there's pose is one of them, so I think that might be hands or something. Then there's
generic
singing,
jazz hand.
so singing is mouths. I think charm is the one where you waggle your bum, but that might
sense.
just be like extras, like feathers or, whatever else. Right. And there's one other thing, I think it's dancing, so that would be legs or feet or whatever. Right. But yeah, and so that means that you're not actually, you haven't made a decision to react to your environment and then you follow that pathway along or adapt, in a reactionary way. It's entirely like, well, here's your Mr. Potato Head thing. Take off everything that there's no sort of aging traits out or, that it's very, okay, we'll sell that, add this. And the whole thing, it just doesn't really, that was the point where I just, it completely destroyed that sense of this is a specific type of creature that you have become attached to, because it all just felt so, malleable and like, okay, well, you're just going to do whatever fits in this scenario and it'll ricochet all over the place because you just picked up a level 4 face, so now your creature looks entirely different. Yeah. I think the only thing that felt like it was a bit more in relation to the environment was I gave one of my creatures a really long neck because that let you reach some of the fruit that was out of reach otherwise. But to be honest, there's loads of fruit on the ground, so you didn't need to.
It's weird, like, because I wanted, like, in the cell stage, it was good that how I designed my creature mattered in gameplay terms, and in the creature stage, it was bad that it did. I just wanted the creature stage to be purely aesthetic. I just wanted to make my creature look how I wanted it to look. And then, I'd still be up for having it level up and stuff, but I wanted that to just be a totally separate skill tree or something where it doesn't affect my layout at all. But they obviously, I think it might have been partly because they put so much work into the creature creator, and the creature creator is so cool, they wanted you to use that multiple times through that stage. So they wanted you to have reasons to change your creature. But those reasons were just like, you must put on this bad thing.
Yeah, or just like live with it for a while you achieve these aims, and then maybe swap everything back to the aesthetic you liked before you graduate to the next stage. So
I wonder if it could have been just a case of like, you unlock new parts and stuff, and then you sort of earn the ability to edit your creature if you want to. So it's like, you've earned a tweak or a regeneration, and the editor opens and you can mess around with it if you like, or you can just carry on exactly as you were and you don't need to, doesn't have any gameplay benefit.
I don't know, because I think that at that point it would have needed all of the systems overhauled to support that, because otherwise you're just going to have to do an awful lot of posing and dancing and trying to get as many creatures in your party as possible just to make your other tribe like you. Or, I regretted all of my diplomacy by the end of that. And then it's the tribe phase, which I actively hated.
Yeah.
Really, really hated.
The tribe and the city, I didn't.
It switches to a sort of top-down-y RTS perspective, and you have absolutely zero personal connection to your creatures at that point. You're not like, you just sort of drag to select and make them go over to other people, and, whereas previously you could get all of your little creatures to sing. If you want to do that again in this for a diplomatic victory of sorts, you have to build different musical instrument huts and get each creature to get a different musical instrument. And then you go over to another tribe, and then you start sort of trying to interact with them through singing so that they know that you're like trying to socialize or whatever. But then they start making requests, so they're like, okay, cool, flute.
Do you know Freebird?
And so you have to like make sure you've got a flautist in your group, and it's like, okay, fine. And then they're like,
Play
okay.
Despacito.
And they're
Alexa.
like, okay, that was great. How about didgeridoo? And you're like, oh, I didn't build that yet. And so, you know, it's this.
Well, I don't know what kind of diplomacy you call this. Don't know what didgeridoo.
And so that's just a hassle. And it's not very clear with how it teaches you to do things. And then the only real customization you can do, your creature is set at this point. So it's just like you get to add, you know, like shoulder pads and masks.
Immediately
and
becomes the 80s.
things like that. And it's just like, it's really frustrating. And my thing just looked a total mess by the end of it. And then you move to the civilization stage, which is essentially a really, really shit version of Civ. And one of my big gripes with it was that I was playing a sort of mid-blue race on the minimap, and I was pitted against a mid-blue race on the minimap that was slightly more luminous than me, but only if you stared at the minimap for long enough. And it's just like,
It's the perfect camouflage.
why would you do this? So I thought the whole world looked conquered, but apparently there was like a rogue city that was like still needed, you know, converting.
Of all the things to get wrong in like a massively complex game, it's like, oh, we couldn't pick another colour.
Like, oh, it was the most annoying thing, and it, like, just micromanaging all of that nonsense. And
were you still
none of
going
it
like
is-
social at this point?
Yeah, but only because it was easier, you know? I'd just send a bunch of buggies out to...
Full of flautists.
So, no,
Got
what it
didgeridoos now,
changes
motherfuckers.
to at that point
That's just Mad
is
Max.
it becomes like a religious thing, I think. So you go over and one of your sort of land buggies projects a giant version of one of your creatures at the enemy building
Look at this.
while they try and shoot you.
It's me.
And it's like, okay, I don't think I quite understand what's going on here. And I didn't really get much of, like,
It's just
that
television.
stage was just so annoying. And it didn't really go anywhere. And it was just, you know, it was really boring. And then it's like, oh, and your reward for all of this is the space stage, and just go and do a bunch of fetch quests and
You gotta get the
expand your
spice.
empire.
All the different spices. There's like 9 kinds of spice.
Yeah, they're all different colours, Tom. Suddenly
Yeah.
they found the colours.
Like, I seem to remember there's like a purple one and a pink one, and those are the most valuable.
Yeah, the green one is the one I encounter quite a lot, and the orange one I think seems to be quite the basic spice.
Your cumin, whatever.
But yeah, so I just, I've played that for a while, and it's like, it's the more engaging, but by putting 3 bad, overly tutorially feeling nonsense games, all of which have a counterpart in the real world that do it better,
Yeah.
I just don't care. I
You
don't
might as well
want
play-
to expand my empire. My empire's stupid.
You're saying you'd be better off playing Osmos, Diablo, Settlers, Civ, and then Gal Civ.
Oh, I mean, yeah. But I think, so the space one, I would be a lot more kindly disposed to it if the game hadn't exhausted my patience. I think it was really interesting for what it was doing, and, you know, the fact that you could sort of try and build this empire, and, you know, it's quite basic, but, you know, the way that it models the galaxies was quite, or, you know, the way it does the star systems. I was quite interested in, you know, zooming in and zooming out, and the idea of terraforming, even though they've implemented it with quite a pain in the arse mini game that's essentially cost gated. It's like, you know, because you go and you buy a colony module for $1 billion squillion space bucks, and then you have to go and buy a thing that you know, you like you can fiddle with the temperature and you can fiddle with the atmosphere by buying these other modules that you then dump on the planet. And then once that's happened, you need to add trees and shrubs of various sizes that you've kidnapped from other star systems. There's just a lot of busy work. So it's just, you could streamline that quite a lot, I think. Or, I think if someone were to do a take on it now, it would be the sort of thing that could get improved in interesting ways,
how is the community creation side of Spore now?
It's still active, although I'm not quite sure I understand the numbers involved, because, I open up the community sharing side of things, and it tells me that, I don't know, like there's 1,600 Maxis creations and 1,700 things altogether, but I know I've browsed through more than the difference between the two's worth of human creations, so I don't know. And the other thing is, some of the ones that you like and download then require one of the expansions, and I'm like, oh hell no. Yeah. So, there were a few that looked really cool, like someone had made like a leopard, and someone had made a really hench Kermit the Frog, but they both required this expansion that I was in no way going
the hench Kermit expansion. What are you talking about?
So yeah, so I don't know. I was thinking of resurrecting the PC Gamer UK Sporecast in your honour.
Yeah.
But
that was what it was all about for me. It was just exploring what people have made with it, and there were so many incredible creations. There was I was just picking like stuff that amused me or caught my eye, and so in my playthrough there's just like a race of sentient sniper rifles that walked around on their tripod, and just a giant ornate antique chair stomping around my world.
Yeah, like there were a fair few that I downloaded and just really liked and would take into the Creature Creator to see how they moved, independent of how they just looked in a still image and things like that. I think the thing that I lost my patience with was in the city and I think possibly the space thing. You start not just being able to design vehicles and buildings. The game makes you design them before you can use them. So in the Civ stage, it's like, you need a town hall, build a town hall. And by that point, you're so annoyed with the whole thing that it's like, here's a block. Just do it. It's fine. Who cares? So, yeah. I don't know.
Do you remember, was it in the review issue of Spore that had the worst PC Gamer cover of all time?
I don't remember.
With the Spore cover. I don't know if it was a preview or the review. The one that looks like I don't know if it was original art or something they sent, but it looked like the Magic School Bus firing a hose at a giant creme brulee. I'm not joking. This cover exists. It's many years ago, obviously, but...
No, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it might have been quite early in the preview process before there really was art for Spore.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's supposed to be like a spaceship lasering a planet, but it just doesn't, none of the individual things look like those things.
This one I think was that, big, like, that one buggy-eyed dude.
The Spore Man.
Oh, who even knows? But yeah, it was it was interesting. It was interesting going back to it and sort of, because all I'd really remembered was a couple of snapshotty personal memories of playing it. So the creature stage was the thing that I remembered for some reason. And also the DRM, row.
Yeah.
Of the time.
Oh, remember those. Mm-hmm. Oh, the late noughties. We're not going to get them back, are we?
Something that I will flag up to people if any of this has made you want to buy Spore is that if you want to use the community stuff, I couldn't get it to work when I was playing on a Steam version of the game. So I would buy it from Origin if you wanted to make use of that stuff, because it wouldn't, for some reason, the login side of things seems balked on the Steam.
It's a shame, but good to know.
But yeah, I think it's a bit cheaper on that than on t'other. Anyway.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Tom, what have you been up to?
Weirdly, I've been playing a lot of FTL.
We're moving the clock forward 5 years.
Yeah. It's all the latest hits here on Quit Crowbar. It's because I got an iPad.
It's good on the iPad.
Yeah. And that was one of the few things from, back when iPads were new and cool that I actually did think, I would quite like to play that. And I don't really have much to say about how it works on the iPad versus the PC, but, I've just been playing a lot of FTL, and, it's really interesting going back to it. It was after Into the Breach. I know
that you all sat here wearing an Into the Breach t-shirt.
Yeah. Bit of a Subset Games, brand ambassador tonight. I have said before that I much prefer Into the Breach. I think Into the Breach is way better. And it was interesting that didn't seem to be like the sort of the community consensus, at least in terms of Steam reviews. Like they're both incredibly positively received, obviously. But Into the Breach is slightly less positively received. And when I looked at the negative reviews, they were almost all FTL fans who want it to be more like FTL. And so I was kind of half wondering if going back to FTL would make me realize like, oh no, this does have all this like extra, I don't know, depth and interest to it that I'd missed. And it may well do. I think a lot of those people playing on like hard and with the really difficult ships that maybe make things, I don't know, force you to think in new ways. But actually going back to it, I was, especially compared to Into the Breach, surprised how little thought it took. Like each individual sort of node, almost all of them are some kind of story encounter where you make a choice. Often you don't have a choice. It's just like, they're going to attack, so you fight them. Or if it's a choice, you choose one or two things and it says, you do that, they attack, and then you fight them. Like 70% of all encounters are just a fight, which is fine because the combat is the core of it. But so I don't really think about those. I often don't read the text. I just kind of like look at the options, and if I don't understand the options, I'll backread a little bit.
A single thing.
Then it might be partly like the loadout I'm using this time. I just went for kind of all lasers all the time because I had a missile launcher, but I just kept running out of missiles and they were expensive to buy again. And so I decided like when I had the opportunity to just buy the laser you start with again, like that's already a thing that fires 3 lasers. If I have 2 of those, I can fire 6 lasers. Why would I not do that? And now I've got 2 lasers that fire 3 lasers, 1 laser that's a heavy laser, and then an ion thing that takes out their shield. And it's just kind of always, because of shields, which are a thing that like an enemy has multiple layers of them. At this stage in the game, they have 3 layers of them. And they regenerate very quickly over time. So when the layer goes down, it's back in like 2 seconds. And so with 3 layers, taking down 1 layer, occasionally is completely useless, never gets you anywhere. So if you actually want to get through their shields, then you need to hit all at once. And so I just do that every time. And if you have a missile launcher, like the missile goes through the shield, so you can like target their shield generator with the missile and then hit with the other stuff. But that presupposes that your missile is going to both hit and take out the shield thing, which frequently it just misses because they're just fast. And then if it does hit, it doesn't do enough damage to actually take any shields down. And so I feel like it doesn't feel like the combat is actually that strategic. I wrote a PC Gamer article about an amazing situation I had in FTL about like, a sort of crazy, a desperate fight where everything was on fire. And, I had a sort of great Star Trek moment where I realized the only way out of the situation was to take down my shields, like turn my shields off in the middle of combat in order to make their shot hit something other than my shields. And it worked and it was awesome. And I think I just sort of, like replaced my memory of FTL with just that story.
Right.
It's just like that all the time, making these amazing strategic calculated decisions. But actually I'm finding, moment to moment, I'm just doing the same thing in every fight. And I'm also seeking out the fights because they're quite easy. I'm playing on normal. It's addictive and it's fun, but compared to Into the Breach, like, every turn is, oh god, how do I do this? Even if you can see a way to do it, you're thinking, isn't there a better way to do it? Can I like sort of extra solve this? And then it does have those occasional moments of like, oh god, this turn is just a nightmare. I've got to think of something really clever to do. So yeah, I still much prefer Into the Breach. The thing I do love about FTL, and I think is a big core of like why it works so well, is just that, feeling of having a crew, especially if you assembled them along the way. Like the ones you start with are cool, but then when you fight the slavers and you you refuse to give up one of your crew and you fight them and you beat them in battle, and then at the last minute they surrender and say, take one of our slaves, if you let us live. And then you take that person and that person's with you for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it's Graham or something.
Yeah. I never bothered to rename them, but just having like a mantis called Robinson on my ship is great. And he, if anyone boards my ship, we get Robinson the mantis to go over and beat them up because he's really good at combat because he's a fucking mantis.
Famously great hand-to-hand fighters.
Yep.
Mantis shrimps, like, deliver a punch that's like, the force of a
supersonic?
a bullet.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. They can really, really mess you up.
Like,
but
as
in
in,
a tiny
is it like
way.
relative to their body size, or is it literally like each?
I think they've been known to shatter aquarium glass with it.
Wow.
If a mantis shrimp did actually attack a human being, how would it fare?
I think there's YouTube videos of stuff.
Man
happening.
versus
like,
mantis.
It really hurts.
I bet.
Like, but it's not like being shot.
Well, I mean, there's no bullet involved, but it's
Right.
like it'll.
So a mantis shrimp holding a bullet is a gun.
I
Is that what you're saying?
obviously.
Guns
Yes.
don't kill people, mantis shrimps holding bullets do. They're good in combat in FTL, for sure. And there was like one story encounter. I have a rock guy on my team. I don't entirely remember where he came from, but I nevertheless feel very personally attached to the rock guy. And coming across an encounter where like some people are in distress and their ship's on fire, and like there's a special option just like if you have a rock crew member, you get to just send in your rock guy because rock can't catch fire. So he just walks in and solves it. Stuff like that is really good. And yeah, just that feeling of like the ship being kind of like a little rickety home.
It's better at stories, FTL, than Into the Breach, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the atmosphere is better. It definitely feels more like a little like lonely home of people who've, surviving desperate situations together.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So do you remember the New Year's we spent doing kind of like
Yeah.
a collective FTL?
FTL by vote.
Yeah, and the resounding cries of smell the glaive.
Yes.
I tried to recreate that in Monster Hunter recently. It's weird. It's not intended as a segue, but in Monster Hunter you pick like, you obviously name your character and things, and that can be viewed by other people, but I think if you fall foul of the profanity filter, which most people won't, but if you do, it just replaces your name with Hunter. And obviously there's a chance that your name might be in a character set that isn't represented to everybody. So you also need to pick a slogan for yourself, which is often displayed instead of your name. And this is like, it's a 3-part thing. This is basically it's a system designed to confound and stress out writers, I think. Cause it's a 3-word phrase, where you have a first word, second word, and third word. And each of those you can set to null and switch them off, I think. But you have the same word list for the first word and the last word. And the middle one is like a different word list, which is somewhat like conjunctions and things, but also just like letters and other things. And obviously the aim is to try and make a joke. And
Death to Chris.
yeah, if Chris was in there, you could do actually I don't think the word death is in there.
No,
and you also
not.
unlock more words as you go along. So occasionally you have to go check again to see if you found the word the that you need. But obviously my weapon of choice in Monster Hunter is the insect glaive, which is shortened to just glaive. So I desperately wanted to be able to smell the glaive in Monster Hunter. And the word smell isn't in there. So I've managed to get as far as brave the glaive.
That's pretty
Which is a kind of challenge to any dinosaur or dragon or dinosaur dragon, that wants to try and smell the glaive. It was first brave the glaive. But, that's a total aside, but it's a journey I've been on as part of my 40 odd hours of Monster Hunter.
The glaive was awesome because it's like a really slow charging weapon that you then draw a line across the enemy ship and it cuts across them. And if I remember correctly, it doesn't penetrate shields. So you have to take out the shields. It's a very careful timing thing. So you kind of like, your burst lasers are charged, but you don't fire them yet because the glaive isn't ready. And then you take it down their shields. And then in that split second where the shields are down, you draw the perfect line across and it does like 2 damage to every room it hits. And you draw the line so that it like, just because it crosses this corner, technically it hits 4 rooms. And then you yell, smell the glaive. And that stuff hasn't come up as much in this current run that I'm doing. But I also, when I get to a shop and there's all these interesting things I can buy, like there's a mind control unit and a hacking unit. And, I just worry too much that if I go into something esoteric, I just won't be able to, like, I'm not getting anyone's shields down reliably. They'll always have one layer of shielding, or like there will just be, the briefest moment when they finally go down. And I feel like I have to get drones because I'm going to need a defense drone because it's the only way you can defend against missiles. And I know missiles are going to eventually be a problem, even if they're not right now. And there's all these, I hadn't really looked into it, but like you can upgrade your sensors and your doors and, your engines and your bridge separately have 2 different upgrade paths. And there's all these different things you can do to your ship that I'm just never ever going to do because they're not the core things. They're not like, I don't deal more damage and I can't take more damage. And so I'm not going to do that. And I kind of wish those were just like, maybe there's some balance reason they can't do this, but I kind of wish it was just like really cheap to upgrade those things. And they had big, profound upgrades. I look at an enemy ship and I just don't know what the weapons are. I can see them and I know that it is possible to determine from their sprite what the weapon is, but I don't know all the things, even after all the hours I've played FTL. And I know roughly what a missile launcher looks like versus a non-missile launcher. But I don't have that information and so I can't strategize around it. And so I don't have a plan beyond just let's just do the thing we always do, which is take out either their shields or their weapons. If they've got a lot of shields, we have to go for the shields first. Otherwise, we just go for their weapons. And yeah, not like limiting that information basically makes the game more similar in each encounter.
Yeah. Yeah, it sort of needs the ability to just almost do a sort of, I don't know how you fix that. I don't know how you make the fun gear worth taking over pure survivability and firepower. Yeah. It feels like this is almost a heat signature problem, not to pass the buck back to you.
Well, have an ice off this. I think with FDL, the way I do it is like, just have you sometimes be given a crazy doors upgrade or sensors upgrade or whatever, like have those just come to you randomly. And so it has a big effect, but you didn't have to invest in it.
I suppose that was maybe there is the discount stuff, like you go to a particular place and it's like this particular upgrade is very cheap. Am I misremembering that? Is that a thing in FTL?
I haven't seen that.
Is that in... Hang on, is that in Into the Breach?
Yeah, yes.
It is, okay. I'm thinking of their other game. So they solved this problem in their other game.
Yeah, and that's good. There is something in this that I hadn't seen before, which I think must be part of the advanced edition, where I went to buy a drone bay and I was going to buy it anyway, but when I clicked on it, it said, oh, this one comes with a free system repair drone. Oh, okay, that's cool. That isn't flagged up on the store interface, so it doesn't actually do a good job of pushing you to buy that thing. But if there's... I also looked at like some crew and there was 2 Zoltan crew, which are like the energy beings. And one of them had a special ability of like he recharges your shields 20% faster. And again, it wasn't flagged up until you click on them, but they do have seemingly special perks to certain things in shops, which I think wasn't in the original, but that's cool.
In short, it's cool when the Zoltan man make the shield go bigger.
Yep. I didn't buy him because I had like 8 crew already. I had that slaver encounter like 7 times. I would always win and they'd always offer me a slave and I always took it. So I had a mantis manning my cameras.
Also very good at that.
Yep. What have you been playing, Chris?
So I haven't played much new because I'm still playing Monster Hunter because Monster Hunter is very long and it just keeps going.
And you're watching the International.
And I'm watching the International. Sometimes I've been doing both. It's very good, Monster Hunter. I like it a lot. I'm not going to appreciate we've talked about it a few times on the pod now. It's settling into a kind of like, not late game because I still haven't finished the campaign, but I'm into the part that on the last podcast, Tom S warned me to get to, sort of where the gear actually starts to count. And that, I can appreciate why that switch over or switcheroo might upset people, but I'm actually quite enjoying it. Very much enjoying the big boss fights, but specifically enjoying it because it's sort of, just it remains a kind of satisfying, kind of happy grind. And, I'm back on the Dota as well, because it's the International and that makes me want to play Dota. And the only good thing about not being at the International is being able to play Dota, which I can never previously do when I was actually out at Seattle or wherever. But the thing that, I didn't realize until the last couple of days, that these games collectively are preventing me from doing is playing World of Warcraft. Because World of Warcraft just got an expansion and I just started to feel this happens every time this happens, and I have successfully resisted it as far back as Cataclysm, which is a long time ago now. I think it, predates my career in games journalism. I went back once since then, but only briefly. But I started to get that feeling of like, I could just play World of Warcraft. I could just play World of Warcraft,
I believe Stephen Messner gave it 86%.
The new one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine it's good. They always do the thing they do, and it's like, yeah, this is good. It's World of Warcraft. But between a few other compulsive games, specifically Monster Hunter, which is basically, I mean, it is a multiplayer game, MMO structure, but I'm playing it by myself because I can kind of make progress by myself, and it's just boss fights. There is no anything else. It's just the big, and I love boss fights, so it is just big, cool fights against exciting monsters, and I love my glaive a lot. Love the glaive. It's another thing I can spell in that, little naming system. I can't imagine playing it any other way, and that's, yeah, it's super rad. Also,
can you have, like, Brave the Love?
Yes, you can. Yeah. Okay. Brave and Love are in the same thing. You can do Romance the Glaive.
That film with Michael Douglas.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. That's it, I think, for phrases. You can make a lot of things that make any sense. And not many people seem to change theirs from the default, which, because it's a complicated, really weird system. But that's true of a lot of Monster Hunter.
Can you have Monster the Hunter?
No, the word hunter is in there, but the word monster doesn't appear to be, because I wanted mine to be Glaive the Monster as a kind of pure descriptor of what I do. It's not actually a full descriptor of what I do, because I usually have at least one cat. And I fire I've got a big moth now, a big fluffy moth, and it's brilliant, because my big fluffy moth, last week I was talking about my paralyzing ladybird. Mm-hmm. This week it's all about the blast moth. The blast moth leaves blast spores behind, which can be detonated, and genuinely the raddest thing in games is doing this huge windmilling glaive somersault through a huge pack of blast spores and blowing a dragon's wing off. It's not something I thought I'd want to do with my August of my 31st year of being alive, but it is nonetheless what I have done. And that's it. Basically, that's all I've been playing. I had a really good Dota run where I was winning every game, and then I just hit the brick wall that happened after that happened. So the game is now the worst game ever made, having previously, about a day ago, been the best. And really that's it for me this week, because I tried to play other things. Well, I really wanted to play Unavowed, which is definitely called Unavowed and not Disavowed, as I put everywhere in the podcast last week. Apologies to everyone involved. Disavowed is the word that was in my head. And I really wanted to play Exapunks. Oh, yeah. But then I realized that these were of no hot take yield potential to the podcast, because you've covered them off quite so well. So that's me, really.
So you played the game that you talked about extensively last week.
Well, yeah, I had to upgrade my pants or something. I'm wearing very good stuff.
Just replacing the Destiny thing, isn't it? Just a straight up.
Yeah, it is. It is exactly the same role in my life, apart from the fact that I play on my PC, not my PlayStation. But yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we all have like mainstays that we go back to, or like, I don't know, there's certain like formats that we're each vulnerable to, and I feel like I'm not vulnerable to the same ones as you. Like, first of all, competitive multiplayer games, not at all. Yeah. And then like the big absorbing semi-online thing like Destiny and Monster Hunter, also have never really caught me, but roguelikes I just kind of can't fucking stop. And
yeah, whereas I can stop every day of my life. Like I sort of get satisfied. I feel like I've seen enough, and then I'll stop.
Yeah, because like when you're talking about FTL, it took me the longest time to sort of admit that I don't like FTL. I just don't get on with it. It's not a game that is for me, regardless of what it does well. It's not my kind of thing to play. But because everybody I knew was so into it, I didn't ever feel like I could actually say that for the longest time. And it was like, okay, FTL, yeah, no, sure. And so, I'd have my anecdotes that I could tell or whatever. But like in my head, I was kind of like, yeah, but it's no Proteus, is it? Oh.
I think for me, the thing that keeps me going back, like the thing about Destiny that I ultimately love isn't the progression mechanics, it's the gun mechanics. Like it has such good shooter fundamentals. I just want to do that forever, even if it's roughly the same forever. And, hundreds and hundreds of hours of doing basically the same thing, but just love those core mechanics so much. And Monster Hunter is...
But also, like, I think you enjoyed the roles that you could take on in teams and things. Like, I genuinely think that social element where you could be the one that was like helping people through raids, or that, you knew how to do the sword thing better than a particular group of friends, then, I genuinely think that was of...
Although that was a factor for like 1 year of a game that I played for 3, if that makes sense. Like, cause I didn't raid at all in Destiny 2. So, like,
I think
and
I've
for the second half of Destiny 1.
Destiny 2 off in terms of your engagement with it in that way, because you just...
They go back for the expansions, basically.
But yeah, but like you weren't like LFGing intently or
Yeah.
making sure that you did all of the things religiously.
Yeah, but I also wasn't like that for like the second half of Destiny 1 either. So it was
fair
like,
enough.
and I played Destiny 1 religiously, but it was just because I love the men popping.
But I think for me, it felt like you were ripe for another game that would let you do those things.
Yeah, although Monsters is technically that, but it's not how I'm playing it at all. I'm just playing it because I love the fundamental combat mechanics. Like I just like it, just feels real good to bop a big dinosaur, and then it goes blah and bits fall off, but it's not gross in a way.
I love how thirsty they all look. They are all the most extra.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
It's just I encountered the pukey or whatever
they're
it is.
very good.
And
That's
it
just
was
a fucking
essentially just like
everything at the wall.
Am I a peacock? Am I a dragon? Am I a cat? Who knows?
It's like a caterpillar, cat, iguana, peacock dragon. It's fucking weird.
With just like loads of feathers, giant teeth. I'm just like, this is brilliant.
Too extra to function.
Yeah,
that dragon.
it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna just have all of the accessories and then some.
That's what it does so well, actually. It's like you get into all of the monster designs really express the personality that's also expressed through the mechanics of that monster. Maybe if I was to add anything to the discussion, it'd be that. It's that you see something when it shows up, and it's always a big surprise when a new monster shows up because they are kind of spectacular things. And you kind of get what its deal is just by looking at it. Like you can research it and find out that, oh, you can bash its tail off to stop its poison attack or whatever. But the actual like animation and the sounds and all of it just sort of expresses like, this guy's an asshole. Like right now I've got a real problem with, it's not Beetlejuice, it's Basil Juice, which is just a stupid name for a dragon, but it's basically just like it just shows up all of the fucking time, fires exploding darts into the ground and fucks off again. And it's massive and it just bellows at you and then fights whatever you're fighting and then gets bored and you and the monster you're fighting both run away and then like we'll regroup later for killing each other. It's real good. I like it a lot, but that's by the by.
What's your weakness, Pip? Do you have a genre that you...
I don't know. I think,
I feel like you like things where you can have like I'm just thinking of a Subnautica base, but then also you're really into Slime Rancher, right?
Yeah, I think I like those kinds of quite relaxed, not necessarily farming things, but things where there are some really satisfying collecting.
Gardening.
It's kind of gardening, but it's also curating and design as well, because the Subnautica base stuff, I got a lot of pleasure out of making treating it almost like the build parts of The Sims. The actual layouts of a thing, or, taking into account, whether I could, what's it called? When you're bodging something together, like not glitching, but, I was trying to work out whether there were any sort of workarounds that would let me do things that the game hadn't intended, but that would end up making a thing look a bit more homely or a bit more, interesting, things like that. So I went back to Minecraft for the first time in a long time the other week because they had the update Aquatic hit Java version. So I went in and just had a little look around, followed some turtles, built an underwater base, which is probably more of a lair at the moment because I'm trying to work out how you can make people get sucked into it but never be able to leave it, except I can leave it. So
like the Hotel California,
I've
but
made
also
a kind
Bioshock.
Because you can make a bubble column that you can make like either a whirlpool or an air column that pushes up. And so the whirlpool one will suck things down towards the bottom of the sea. So I made that the entranceway to my base and then have the blowing version be the exit. And I'm considering trying to rig up some kind of redstone activation for that if possible, so that I could theoretically lock people in my underwater prison.
We all got to have goals.
Yeah. Sometimes you just can't stop doing that one thing in a game you always do.
Yeah. But I think it's nesting. It's just making a nest in a game that I then
no one can
decorate with twigs and attractive plants.
You like your puzzle games as well.
I do. I love a good puzzle game. I love a good casual game as well, you know. Love me some match 3, some hidden object stuff. Also, massively hardcore esports MOBA type stuff. So I think that's the thing, is like it's from either end. Like there's the part for me that is really into the hyper competitive stuff that has like a community scene around it, and then there's the other end of that spectrum when I've sort of gorged on on MOBAs and whatever, and I'm suddenly like, I want to be alone and build a castle in which to be alone with maybe some turtles that I've trapped. There are actually bats in my cave, in my lair, because I think a cave accidentally spawned, and I don't really want to interact with the cave in case it suddenly fills with water. But yeah, so that's a bit of a worry, but you can hear them flapping around.
Shall we do some questions from questions?
Yeah.
Because it's getting a little bit humid in this room and I want to go to sleep. We're going to do a mix of some new questions and a question or two from the pile that accumulated for episode 250. Thank you again for sending in questions. Sorry if we don't get around to your question. First question comes from perennial long question man Kane. And in tribute to his very long question, I'm going to read the end of it, basically. But Kane's email covers the topic of skill and skill ceilings in games, and how every player has a natural level that they may or may not hit. And how games are inevitably divided, both in terms of the communities and also in terms of who people design for, and who is the optimal target of a given balance pass or whatever on a game. Anyway, the question is telling someone who's hit their personal skill cap to get good basically the same as telling poor people upset about housing prices to simply set aside $50,000 a year while living rent-free with their rich parents? Etc., etc., etc. Is the focus on the desires and demands of the skill bourgeois ruining gaming for the skill proletariat? Is a revolution to overthrow the oppression of the competitive minority long overdue? Or should salty nubs just call the wambulance? Regards, Kane. So, yes, that is the question.
I feel like there are at least several issues with that direct analogy, but I do take the basic point.
Yes, I agree as well. I can see what you mean, because it's saying your advice to someone is simply do something impossible. Let's not focus on the analogy quite so much, but like the substance of the thing. And I, for what it's worth, kind of, agree broadly. Well, I think the assumption that games require challenge is dead now, hopefully, but doesn't.
Do you?
I feel like, if you pay any attention to games whatsoever, like, it's very hard to argue for. Like, people still do. That's not to say that, people can't find.
Yeah, like the idea that all games must have be challenging is
it's
disproved now at this point.
I feel like,
okay, yeah.
not that people won't try and argue it, but I'm saying those people are categorically wrong.
Something that popped into my head about this, well, there's a few different things. So one is about, I guess, basic capitalism, which is essentially pushing you towards something, whether it's attainable or not, right? It's the sense of you can be better, you can get better, you just need to spend more time or money or this or that, and then you will be beautiful or young or successful, right? There's that is a core loop that keeps you coming back to the game, that you will, buy into that industry and you will continue to invest in trying to achieve a victory of some kind, right? Mm-hmm. So that's sort of a little bit of it. Another thing that I just want to do for my own peace of mind, and I hope I don't do it ham-fistedly, is that, I think that the conversation about sort of games and the challenges they present gets tangled up in conversations about accessibility. And I think that they often have different slants. It's not about wanting an easier version. It's about wanting to be able to have a way to engage with the idea or the concept or, whatever, and sort of meeting people where they're at and taking account of particular accessibility challenges.
Yeah.
So I think that's just one thing that I wanted to sort of throw out there, because I think it's something to sort of bear in mind and make sure that this isn't entirely a conversation about, what a person who doesn't have any of those, considerations thinks or does or react to.
I thought Celeste had a good handling of this, where it had it's a hardcore platformer along the lines of like Super Meat Boy and stuff like that, where traditionally it's considered that the whole point of the game is that it's difficult, and that having an easy mode would be defeating the point. But they still added an accessibility menu, which included things like slowing down just the whole timescale of the game, all the way to just making you totally invulnerable. You just can't die at all. And they just sort of, I can't remember exactly how they phrased it, but they basically said, the game's meant to be played as is, but if you need these accessibility options, they're here. And that was good, for sort of establishing, a range of options without confusing the issue of like, what is the game? Like if you don't have any, problems with the sort of default way the game works, then you just play it as is. If you do, then it's totally up to you how you tweak it. And just slowing down the game is not something I've seen before, actually. And that's probably quite a good catch-all for a lot of accessibility issues. Like there are a lot of things where it's just about like, how fast can you do these multiple different things?
I think, it will be out actually by the time this podcast airs. The new issue of PC Gamer, has a feature written by Edwin about Overwatch and about character design, and how there's tension within that community as to balance passes over particular heroes, and what that has sort of said or implied about the idea of who the game is, in air quotes, for, in terms of taking away certain abilities because they were perceived as not using skills in the sense that the players at the elite level consider skillful or fair or fun to play against.
And this happened with like Symmetra's gun, right? They used to sort of lock on to people and just hit them as long as...
And like that was deemed, like playing on easy mode, and therefore, and so there were a lot of people who gravitated towards it, not because it was easy or, but because it allowed them to have a character they could play, and they enjoyed the other things that she did or that she brought to the table, her ultimate, things like that. And Mercy is the other one, the other sort of big sticking point in that game.
Yeah. Symmetra, they changed it, right? So they
changed her role completely.
She has to aim now.
Yeah, they moved her into the damage category. She's not a support anymore. Like, they completely redesigned her.
But Mercy still, it does have a lock-on heal beam, right?
Yeah, she does, but they changed a lot of things about Mercy generally. Like, Mercy's been nerfed.
Her ultimate isn't Valkyrie anymore. That's a regular ability, right? Like,
Res is no longer her. Valkyrie has her ult.
Oh, sorry.
Her old ult.
Her old ultimate, you could resurrect your entire team.
No, it's a targeted thing.
And now it's like a one-person targeted thing with, Yeah. But anyway, so that's a really interesting piece. So I would totally recommend reading it if you are in a good newsagent. Buy it also. Don't just read it in the newsagents, I should stress. But also it's one of those things where, it sort of speaks to this idea of, what good play looks like, what skillful play looks like, what the people who make the game value or what they want to balance around, or the members of the community that they're specifically listening to. And some of the people that Edwin talks to in the feature are sort of talking about why they initially gravitated towards the game and why they don't necessarily feel that they have a place in it anymore, or why that is sort of been thrown into question, or the relationship with the game has changed. And so that was sort of really interesting, especially in relation to this. I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
So I think every game has, I think the key is simply to know who your audience who your game is for and ensuring that you are catering to that person. And I think there's two levels of this issue. One is that there is a broad sense, there's a broad sense of games as something that require the ability to master or need to be mastered, and that is often led by a minority of people capable of mastering them. But that is never universally true in terms of what's qualitatively good about a game or particularly useful to developers, even if you balanced Guitar Hero around what the best Guitar Hero players can do versus what the vast majority of people do with Guitar Hero. You'd end up with an unplayable game, to the people who actually play it for, what it's quote unquote built for. In fact, I think that's a useful example because that's an example where the two can kind of exist harmoniously. The people modding hyper competitive, hyper complicated tracks into Guitar Hero simply to have something to do because they've mastered everything else, know that they are the exception. They know that them having to modify the game simply to be able to push it further, is something that is almost a testament to their skill because it was built as a party game with difficulty levels and ways to participate at different levels, but nonetheless built as a sort of something for a lot of people to enjoy, with obvious accessibility caveats that come in with the nature of its input system.
I can't reach the orange key.
Exactly. Well, exactly.
My hand is too small. I have to play whatever the level is that only has 4
easy
keys.
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, and the fact that you can set difficulty on an instrument by instrument basis so that your friends can play together, that kind of thing.
I can reach the orange key, but I'm not skillful enough to press it.
And that's the thing I would say actually, is that I think that's a positive example because that's the way it should almost always go. If your community is ever modding something to make the game palatable to a certain subset of players, if you're doing it right, it should be the players who want it to be harder that are modding it rather than people who are simply modding it to make it available to them at all. And that then links difficulty to accessibility.
Yeah.
There are also, in terms of mods, there are also things like no enemy mods and things, which are kind of interesting. And we have a special feature on that, actually, again, in the magazine. It's a great issue. But something that popped into my head as you said, about the Guitar Hero difficulty settings is I think I like it in games where they find a different way of referring to the settings, even if it needs a bit of explanation.
Hurt Me Plenty,
next
for
to
example.
The thing. Well, but so if you're saying that something is normal, that carries so many assumptions about the gaming world, and it carries so much sort of, I feel shame, or I used to feel shame before I decided just sod that, this is ridiculous. But if I wasn't playing something on at least normal difficulty, because it's kind of like, oh, okay, you're not, and this sort of speaks to a load of other deeply ingrained problems, about sort of who feels like they belong in games anyway. But it's that thing of like, oh, well, if you completed it on easy, did you really even complete it? You didn't really play the game. You played like a light version of the game.
Yeah, I was surprised. It's great that some games you can change that after you start, but I was surprised to hear from some friends who are, I can't remember what game it was, but something like Prey, where they were just having a brutal time with difficulty, just way, way too hard, not enjoying it anymore, probably going to quit playing. And they're playing on normal and there is an easy and they can switch mid-game, but they just will not do it because it's called easy. Even though they know they need it and they're literally saying this game is too hard for me, I can't play it. They still can't play it.
I think if you numbered them, it'd be fine.
Yeah.
If you have 3 difficulties and it's 1, 2 and 3 and it defaults to 2.
Or if it says scenic and then an explanation of what it changes, or, I like, it's not quite the same, but in something like Subnautica, where it has very different, it has modes. A bunch of different modes in which you can play survival, from absolutely sandboxy, do what you want, to, proper hardcore, proper, there you go again, I go again, but, I like the more options you get, the more you can kind of just sort of tailor it and have an experience with the game. But I think that calling something scenic or, story mode or, I
think having descriptions, I think Mass Effect 3 did this well, because that was the first time BioWare did story mode, where the combat's basically trivial. And it's just having a description that goes with it saying this is for players who value these things. Yeah. And so it's not about where you measure against the population. It's about, you bought this piece of entertainment. What kind of entertainment do you want? We have this in several modes.
It's been kind of interesting watching Slay the Spire deal with this. And this, it follows a trend I like, especially in roguelikes, where there's just the default way to play is the easiest possible way to play. There's, that's as easy as it ever gets. There is no kind of, normal is easy basically. And then if you want it to be harder, there's all these extra options that kind of get unlocked afterwards that, it has a thing called Ascension mode, which, just sort of stacks on extra difficulties, but you start again from scratch. It's not like you're not continuing on from your last run. You just, you're playing the game from scratch, but you have a bunch of things stacked against you. And the Ascension modes go like, you have to complete it to unlock the first Ascension mode. And then after you complete it on Ascension 1, you unlock Ascension 2. And I think they got up to like 15 or more and just stacking on more and more problems and making it harder and harder. And that seems to work really well. I hear people in our roguelikes channel on the Discord, talking all the time about, I've just done Ascension 8 with the Silent, and being really pleased at those achievements. I think I won on Ascension 1 with the Silent, and then I never played the Ascension modes ever again because, there's not so much because of the difficulty as, I just want to win every time, really. That's that's the thing that complicates this. There's accessibility, there's player skill, and then there's also player preference. And my player preference is different to most people, which is I just want to win every time I play. I almost never want to fail. I want that to be if I should know even before it happens that, I fucked this up because I did something stupid. That's the only time I should ever fail. Every other time I should win. And just how much I win by should be the only variable, which is kind of I have no shame about playing on easy. I play lots of games on easy just because I prefer to have that kind of balance.
Good question.
Yeah.
Unless you got more to add, Pip?
No, just that possibly a request because, obviously elements of the issue we finished working on a little while ago, that will now be out, touched on stuff like this. So I've sort of been trying to sneak in little bits of reading on the subjects. I'm aware that it's a bit of a blind spot for me. And so if anyone has any particularly interesting sort of, articles that they've seen around and about on accessibility and difficulty settings and people doing interesting things around that, I'd actually be really interested for people to maybe tweet them at me, or it's at Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR, because I've not had much time to actually sit and scout things out.
Our next question comes from Colthor, who writes, Toot Semisonic Warriors, an evil wizard has trapped you and anyone you care about in a pocket universe. To release them, you must decide on one thing to purge from all games past and future. His list of examples include DRM, boss fights, in-game purchases, etc. Basically bad business, artistic and technical decisions. Which one do you eradicate? Thanks for asking, Colthor.
Mine would be missions where you got to follow that guy, and if you get too close, you fail, and if you get too far away, you fail. Especially the too far away condition, because it's always you lost him, but often you can still see the guy. He's right there. Or even if you can't, if you actually just gave me a couple more seconds, I would get back to where they were. I haven't actually lost them. It's the measure of whether I've lost them should be, do I know where they are? If I do, I haven't lost them. And, that's a staple of the Assassin's Creed series of for about 3 or 4 games. That was half the missions, it seemed. It's especially bad. There's extra bonus bad points for if, losing the person results in mission failure and you have to repeat it. But then if you do catch them, it results in a cutscene where your character loses them. And that's the actual, how the story progresses, is that you lost them in the chase. Because it's why weren't the other 8 times I lost him canon?
I think, sorry.
Go ahead, Pip.
I think for me, it tends to be the thing I'm most angry with right this moment, and I will not be dissuaded right up until the next thing comes along.
I would go for unlock mechanics in online competitive multiplayer games. Of any kind. I don't think you can make a case for them from a player point of view. I'm saying that right now. I'm going to throw that out there. I think you can only make a case for them from okay, if you were to make the case, it would be something that no player really wants to have to think about like this. It would be that they enhance engagement, they keep people grinding away at them, and as long as people are grinding away at them, there are people to play against. It shouldn't be down to that. You should just make a game that's so good people don't want to leave.
So, do you think that there is any merit in the fact that you spent time to earn a thing? Like, the idea of earning?
I think you do if that earning process is something that sort of like, if there's like an ecosystem of earning, which makes me sound like a Tory MP, but I'm going to say it.
Makes you sound like you're on stage at E3.
Or both. Like,
an earnings call.
Yeah. What I mean is, I can sort of excuse games like Destiny from this because there's so many different ways of earning stuff in that game. You can always be having fun doing something different. You can be playing solo, you can be playing with friends, you can be playing story stuff, you can be doing dungeons, you can be doing PvP. The MMO model is actually fine. That's why I've specified sort of purely competitive games.
Okay.
And also because often balance is sort of flattened out for PvP, ironically. And it's because you've got so much to do that you're always kind of busy.
So hang on, is it that you hate those mechanics, or you hate them when there aren't enough of them to distract you with a lot of hand waving?
I think it actively hurts a certain type of game, specifically shooters.
Okay.
Because I think there's from a design point of view, something that I enjoy about multiplayer competitive shooters traditionally that is killed by this mechanic is the sense that you get given this big sandbox full of stuff, and it can be intimidating at first to know which kind of weapons to use and how to position yourself and how to configure your class your way. But there's lots to learn and there's lots of things to explore, and that exploration is simply gated by your curiosity and your ability to read guides and talk to other players, not by the fact that you've got to play for 10 hours to get this particular gun. And if you haven't played this class this much, then maybe the play style for this class that you actually enjoy is locked away behind 20 hours of grinding. It's just, basically what I'm saying is Tribes was perfect and every other game got it fucking wrong.
Wondered how long it would be.
Well, because it's an example, right? Like, I honestly don't think you can make a case for it except for that player retention thing. And players don't want to be thinking about player retention.
I wonder whether you could make a case for it, but only in very specific circumstances. So, for example, like with limited hero pools or something, where you're starting out with a game and you are playing with like a limited set of what's available, so you don't immediately get overwhelmed, but everybody else is in that same boat.
Yeah,
so
this
as long
is the
as
thing.
It hits you.
I think I miss games simply trusting the player to manage their own, like, because things like limited pools are often then, it's very rare that something like a limited pool is attached to a system which isn't then going to commodify that thing in some way, either behind money or behind a time gate or grinding or whatever system it is. Like, it's, I'm not opposed to like, limited, like, well, for example, like Dota is, for my money, the only MOBA that gets this right, like, because it does have a limited mode. And it is wholly optional because unlimited mode is there as well. Like that makes sense to me because it means that again, you are given the responsibility for your own experience. It's when games sort of basically pretend that they're being accessible, but they're actually introducing you to a pay with money or time ecosystem. I don't know.
think they can be both, as in I think that I like that. I don't think this is necessarily what games are doing, so I don't want to, come down on their side and it be just, actually, no, it is just a commercial thing and I'm just, wrong. But I do think that I think that the language of whether a game trusts you or not is a bit complicated. Like I would often be, take Rainbow Six Siege for example. Mm-hmm. I won't play that game because I tried it and it was overwhelmingly complicated, but it felt like everyone was expecting me to be good at it without having any space in which to practice. And so that was me kind of done with that whole experience because there was no middle ground. There was no safe place in which to earn those skills, to learn the mechanics, to figure out where I fitted within within a team.
It's Siege. I think that's a very specific problem to Siege, actually. Like, it's both very high stakes and very class based. Like, it's not like Counter-Strike where it's like, I understand what went wrong because we're just gun people in a gun world. It's like, Siege is both, like, it's a strange combination of things. It's like, it's both highly lethal, highly Twitch-based, highly playbook-based. So if you don't know the specific way to play a map, you're screwed even if you know your character. Like, it's knowledge gates all the way down. And it's good once you've cracked it, but I'm not sure that that's a problem that Siege even solves by limiting your access to bits of it. And the only thing it can do to make it easier for you is the single player stuff that it does. And that is never going to teach you the things that you need to know for actual multiple player.
I think there are things it could possibly do in a limiting capacity that would be a better experience, but I don't know how much that would be universal and how much that would be, this is how I would better learn.
Yeah.
So.
And also I think some of that stuff would be very specific to Siege because like, I think Siege is almost a standout game in terms of how many different ways it finds to be hard to learn. In addition to the fact that also it's, you know, if you go for the cheapest version, then you're also grinding to unlock operators and things before you find the one you actually like.
Yeah.
That's why I'd get rid of that, basically.
Isn't it crazy how TF2 did all this? Like, they would introduce new unlockables for a class, and then you'd have to get all the achievements for that class to get those.
Yeah.
And the achievements were often just really stupid things that were not at all about playing the game well. And so everyone just did those dumb achievements for a couple of weeks.
I remember a little while ago I had to write or check a summary someone had written of how PUBG's cosmetics system worked, and I was just like,
Some bonkers.
holy heck, that is a mess and a half, and it is not possible to condense it to like shorter than, you know, a chapter. Then you go here, and then this happens, and then you unlock this, and then you unlock basically a chance to get another chest, and
Yeah. And then the chest contains a sock.
it's a shirt. Great. Brilliant. It's like TM Lewin.
Our final question of the evening comes from Alex, who writes, Dear ladies and sirs and ladies, I'm becoming a father soon, very soon. Our daughter could come any day now. And this question was sent 11 days ago because it was one of the ones sent in for 250. So, congratulations. Hope all is well. Yeah.
Hope everyone is healthy and happy.
Before my gaming life becomes a baby and a Switch for the foreseeable future, I decided that I would start and finish The Witcher 3 and expansions before it becomes impossible. Started in April, finished tonight, taking about 4 months in all. PUBG distractions made things take a little longer, but all in all, Geralt has been my gaming life all summer. What a fucking masterpiece that game is. Several of you know that already, so I won't dwell on its merits. Here comes the question. It's very rare the game inspires me to get all its achievements, almost never now that I'm in my 30s. Witcher 3 is now one of those games, 100% for the main game and the expansions, because, as Chris once very well put it, Mass Effect, it's a nod to the developer for creating such an experience that you loved so much. Yakuza 0 was the one before this because that's also a fucking masterpiece. Big old smiley face. What about you folks? What has recently inspired you to go all of the way? Does anything any more different, smiley face? Take care, Alex. And sorry we're not answering this question in time to help. But it's an interesting question, so.
Into the Breach, because it locked a squad behind all the achievements. And that motivated me to nearly get them all. And then it motivated me to give up and cheat to get the squad.
You're not being a very good brand ambassador right now.
Yeah.
I think
you're cheating ways.
I'm at the point with Monster Hunter now where I'm kind of like at the sort of, you can literally make a shopping list in game and it'll collect all the crafting materials you need for the items you want. And then you can just look at that when you open the world and like, do I have enough horns? Not yet. And that's the point where you're like, I can perceive that there are different ways of maxing out that game, from simply like, I've seen all the monsters and done everything, which is probably the healthy point to stop, to I have a tool for every single possible occasion. And I can see the temptation of both. And I think that's because, again, to return to an earlier point, I enjoy the look and feel of that world and the minute to minute of it so much that, I feel compelled to just invest in it until I don't like it anymore, which might be another 50 hours from now, realistically. And that's a nice feeling because it's like, there's nothing I fundamentally don't like about this, is sort of the thing I look for. Like, I find that there's plenty of very worthy open world games where I haven't necessarily stuck with them because, you know, I'm not like having an amazing, like, I don't know, I find it really hard to kind of describe exactly what it is that keeps me going with something. Like, I'm still playing Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is sort of objectively probably one of the best games from the last couple of years in terms of its systems. It's an extraordinary piece of design.
I don't know. I've failed at it many a time.
But this is the thing. I think it lacks, I think if you're talking about what it lacks, I think it lacks something kind of minute to minute and grabby, whatever form that takes. It is laudably unwilling to rope you in with some kind of cheap engagement mechanic, like leveling or something like that. It doesn't want you to do that. In fact, it does things the opposite of the things everything other game does, in terms of giving you more freedom and more power to be creative with its mechanics and more encouragement to go out and try new things. All the things we say we want games to do, and it doesn't do the grindy, you're a level 4 Link now kind of stuff. And it's almost worse for it, which makes me feel bad about me.
Don't feel bad about that. Just go back and play Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. Because
that was the pinnacle of the medium. And I am still a young person. No, I don't know. I think I've got 2 games on the go at the moment, which is unusual for me. One is Undertale and one is Hollow Knight. And I think the point that I was going to make with them was that I've owned them both for a fairly long time, and I've been interested in them for a fairly long time. At least Hollow Knight I was, but it has bided its time until now to be the right game at the right time, if that makes sense. So I wasn't particularly worried when I didn't want to play Undertale before. I wasn't, upset that I wasn't sitting down with Hollow Knight, even though I thought it looked beautiful and had spoken to the developers about the art style previously. But it was one of those things where apparently now, in the year of Luigi 5, the year of the death of Luigi, if you will, that I finally got the urge to play it, and it actually hooked into something in my brain, and I've made meaningful progress and intend to continue. And Undertale, it was slightly different. It was that thing of people who know you telling you that a game is very you and you'll love it. And I've had so many not great recommendations off the back of that. And I kind of worry about it, because people are like, oh, people love this. And it's kind of like, it's quite a boring thing with quite a sort of, nice art style, but it doesn't, and I'm like, oh, is that what you think of me? It's just, it's got some bright colours and you don't really do much. So I've had quite a few, I guess, false starts with things that people have recommended, and I think I initially rebelled a bit against being so aggressively pigeonholed with Undertale, and then I didn't want to play it because so many people had written so many opinion pieces about it that I kind of knew that as soon as anything in what they'd said or tweeted started to mean something, it would spoil something. So I didn't want to get on that bandwagon, and then I figured enough time had passed. So I went to the Steam page and downloaded it. While it was downloading, I feel like I got a massive spoiler from a PC Gamer article I had dragged into the news feed for that page.
Fucking PC Gamer.
And I genuinely don't know if it's a spoiler, and I kind of don't want to know, because at the moment I'm still telling myself it might well have meant nothing. But if this makes you think, oh yeah, I've got Undertale, maybe I should install that. Like, keep your hand on the thing until until you're not looking at the bit with the news on it, or get a friend to click play for you.
But get it off Steam, perhaps. I'm sure there's a non-Steam version out there.
But I think the thing that is gradually leading me on to, and I'm very sorry, we can all move on with our lives in a moment, is that I will play things through to completion if I'm doing it for a work review. But at this point, if a game isn't grabbing me, I actually don't feel bad about that. It's, you know, that's fine. It's annoying if it's expensive or it's, you know, hopefully within the refund period or whatever. But it's one of those things where I'm not actually worried about that. It just, you know, it's not the right thing at the right time, and I can usually either wait and it'll have its moment. I'm actually still, you know, I've got The Witcher 3, but I'm just waiting until, you know, there's a solid block of time that I can actually sink into it without other things needing to have my attention. But yeah, I think, I don't know if that answers the question at all, but.
How about you, Tom?
I'm forcing myself to give more things a chance, but in response to, you know, keep it manageable, I'm also being harsher than ever with like how quickly I'll bail given that chance. I'll just be like, okay, I've given it 5 minutes, I don't fucking like it. It may well get 10 times better later, but I just don't have the energy to find out.
Do people's recommendations mean that you are more likely to persevere with something?
Yes. But I do have a similar thing where like, not to talk about too much, but Breath of the Wild was heavily recommended to me by everyone. And I did love it for like 10 hours and then I really just fell off a cliff with it. Not a cliff in the game, but just like, it hasn't drawn me back at all. And when I've tried to go back, when I forced myself to go back, it's just sort of felt, you know, punishing and haven't felt like there's anything out there for me in it. Every shrine I go into is just another boss fight and I can't do any of them. And, all the systemsy stuff, I see videos of people doing cool things, but I never do those cool things or get into any situation where I can think of any of those cool things to do, which sounds a lot like what people tell me about Deus Ex and all the games I love.
I was thinking, hang on, are you me? And is this like Dishonored 2 or something?
Yeah, it's weird. It must be something about the systemsiness, or the situations it puts you in, I think. It just like, in an immersive sim, the situations have been designed to kind of draw those things out of you. It's just, well, you can't take these 4 guys on straight on. So how are you going to do it? Which vent are you going to go in? Which item are you going to use here? And, you know, if it's done well, it doesn't feel like it's been designed. And if it's done really well, it actually hasn't been, the solution I end up doing hasn't been designed. But, Breath of the Wild isn't, the shrines are designed, but then like the sort of open world stuff, it always just felt like a bunch of enemies who are going to hit me with their weapons unless I hit them with my weapons first.
Yeah. I think Breath of the Wild, I had 2 very sort of specific problems. And one was that I couldn't reliably remember where I was supposed to be you know, it felt like because it didn't want to tell me where to go, it also just didn't even give me a hint a bunch of time. So
is that once you leave the plateau?
Yeah, and so I booted it up. I was at the top of a mountain dying of cold, and I didn't remember why I was there. I didn't know where I was going. I couldn't figure out how to get down. But the other thing was I kind of figured that because of the systemsiness, it was entirely possible I'd got myself into an unmanageable situation, and so it just felt kind of... because I couldn't guarantee that I wasn't in an impossible situation, I lost the will to spend the time finding out whether I was or not.
Thank you very much for your question, Alex. I hope all's well with baby. Thank you to everyone who sent us questions. If you'd like to send us a question for a future episode, you can email us at questions@crateandcrowbar.com. You can also tweet us at crateandcrowbar. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/crateandcrowbar, and on Patreon at patreon.com/crateandcrowbar. Thanks very much to all of our backers. We had a big wave of new backers recently. Thank you very much if you recently chose to support us and our spin-off pods of varying sorts. If you would like to follow us as individuals, that's the next bit of the outro, isn't it? I'm on Twitter at cthurston. That's CTHURSTEN. Pip.
I barely use Twitter right now, but I will check it for these potentially cool articles. So
links
at Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR.
I am at Pentadact, PENTADACT.
Lovely. Thanks for listening, everybody.